Man, hoop heads, basketball fans, appreciate you guys for chiming back in with us. Of course, you know what this is. This is Tate's Take, the podcast. Find it anywhere you find your favorite podcast: iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Red Circle, Stitcher, streaming live on YouTube. I see you out there. And also streaming live on Facebook. So I appreciate everybody that's having the opportunity to check in with us. And of course, to subscribe. You guys know that is like the golden word of the day, if you will, if there's a such thing. And also make sure that you go and follow on social media at Tate's Take Hoops, TATESTAKEHOOPS. I always hashtag that where basketball lives. I guess that's my own little slogan or whatever, if you into that sort of thing. Remember also, as you can see it, scrolling across on the bottom on the ticker, feel free to comment below with some questions and opinions. I'm going to feed the people some really good information, and I won't be by myself because I told you guys I got somebody else that is y'all thought I was a college basketball head. Like, there ain't many people. I don't do a whole ton of like recycling guests, but I had to make sure I did it on this one because I'm like hearing some other people after the last podcast that we did that was like, yo, like, this dude knows his stuff. Like, this dude knows college basketball and he's very passionate about it. Obviously, like you, I didn't know that we can make a Deshaun Tate clone by any means, but I guess the good Lord hooked everybody up, if that's even a good thing, when making a Deshaun Tate clone. So without further ado, I want to bring my dude up in here, man, because dude, listen, when I say dude knows his stuff, like, dude is on top of it. He's doing all sorts of really neat things, and I'm going to make sure that we plug that. Plus, I learned something new about him today, too. At least I kind of think it was something new. So let's go ahead and jump up into it. I'm going to bring my dude in here, Colby Dant. Looks a little much kind of hard to see you a little bit. It might be the situation. Colby, what's popping?
How's it going? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I for a second there was looking bright, and now I gotta talk. You know, I gotta hire a cameraman. That's what we gotta figure out here, man.
Yo, so I told I didn't have really a chance to let the people know what we're doing. Obviously, we're gonna get into some of Coach K's comments. Just some overrated teams, some underrated teams, a special segment called Locks of the Dant. I'll explain that a little bit later too as well. And we've had now about 4 solid weeks of college basketball so far. So keeping our fingers and toes crossed that we'll be able to complete the season.
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, I know we you know that what Johnson going down for Florida's got us. Man, I don't know. I'm just really hoping that that we get this thing, because I think that will halt everything. Not only college basketball. I think that halts. I would be very shocked if the SEC in football was like, yeah, we're still going to play. If and I'm wishing the best for Johnson and his family. I feel horrible that they even have to go through this, especially during the holidays. So just absolutely horrible. So hopefully we can get past this and he'll be okay and everything will go forward, hopefully.
For sure. If you could do me just a really slight favor and just kind of tilt your camera down just a little bit, that would be outstanding. Perfect.
I'm trying. Appreciate it. It was brighter last time I was on. What's going on? Same spot, same computer, same camera.
I don't know. It is a little dark where you are and not nearly as clear, but nonetheless, I think the most important thing is that the people are getting some really good information and content. And then I guess it works out well for who needs to hear the information more importantly than anything. And I just want to make sure that I do my part here by that's weird. Okay, at the Colby Dant, if I'm not mistaken.
Colby D, just the letter D.
At the Colby D, there we go. Okay, so that's what we got in our locker room today, man. Colby Dant is my dude right here, man. Y'all gonna love this. Writer, college basketball analyst, comedian, something can't say that I knew before, and podcast host of the College Experience Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Catch him on Twitter at the Colby D. That is at TheColbyd. And what you think, man? I got to get your opinion on something before we go into your special segment. I decided to do I can't say I've ever done it before. I decided to go with the porn mustache today. You know, the nieces and the nephews, I got about 10 of them. They're all making fun of me and whatnot. But I got a couple people that say they digging it, man. You like the pouring mustache I got going?
I'm loving it, man. Look. You're right. You might be ahead of the curve. You know what? It takes a trendsetter to know it. You know what I mean? And maybe a decade from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now, you know, everyone's going to be doing that. So I say, I think you own it well. Keep, you know, let the haters hate, man. You're fine.
Heavy influence by Larry Bird, I guess we can say that. And even more so that, I don't know, maybe I'm just trying to channel my inner El DeBarge or something like that. Let's get into the locks of the Dant. And this was something that I told a couple people. They're like, man, I need somewhere to be placing some of these bets. I don't know, maybe you can kind of guide them in the right direction, but I need some locks, Tate. And I typically don't like, me personally, to use the word locks, although I get a lot of people that come to me that are like, dude, I need some locks. I need some teams. I got a couple dollars to play with. Okay, Christmas coming up. I need a couple extra funds. I'm like, I got the perfect person for you. Okay. So we got this segment called Locks of the Dant, not Locks of the Day, but Locks of the Dant. You get one money line bet for college basketball, one over-under bet for college basketball, and one spread bet. Or it could be NBA. It could be football. Whatever Colby Dant wants to do with it. Who are some of those?
Well, you know what, man? I'm gonna stay true to your show, and I'll keep it back. Look, we got football, we got it all covered. I work for sportsgamblingpodcast.com. They're my people. We started that thing. We publish all of our picks. We pick every college football, college basketball game. So I got to shamelessly plug myself for a second, but I'll stick to basketball. With college basketball, you know, since the season started, I don't want to jinx myself because I've only had 2 losing days since the season started on my locks. Now, I've had days where I've lost, but on my locks, only 2 losing days. Tonight's a light slate, but I'll start off with I will take you to San Diego, California, where I got the Nevada Wolfpack. I think laying. Let me give you a current. This very second, I believe laying 3 now. It was 2.5 against San Diego. Steve Alford's squad, you know, coming off of a loss to a Grand Canyon team that I don't think people realize. Bryce Drew's doing a solid job in year 1 with Grand Canyon, which, believe it or not, it's a university. I think a lot of people get that confused with that online commercial with Larry Fitzgerald doing the Phoenix University. But no, this Nevada team's actually decent. And I was never a big Steve Alford guy at UCLA or even prior, but this isn't San Diego State we're talking about. This is San Diego. So I think Nevada's got enough talent with Grant Sherfield, Desmond Cambridge, and Zane Meeks to really put it on San Diego. So I'm going to lay the 3 and take the Wolfpack there. Now, did you say call for an upset, a money line one? I'm trying to go through the rules here again.
Yeah, no, it's all good. It doesn't necessarily have to be upset or whatever, what have you, but just whatever you feel confident in. And it could be college basketball today. It could be NBA today. It could be tomorrow. It could be NFL, whichever way you want to go with it to let the people know where they need to be putting their money at so they can get some extra Christmas presents.
There we go. Okay, well, Nevada is option 1. Option 2, I have a fade Northern Arizona rule, and that really happened. Like, I was doing some stand-up in Flagstaff, Arizona a few years ago, and my car broke down, and I was stuck in Flagstaff for a couple days, and I ended up going to watch some Northern Arizona basketball. And no disrespect to the Lumberjacks, but they have a horrible basketball program, right? Like, I mean, I actually, dude, most of the time we can watch a game and say, you know, I don't belong anywhere near this court. You know what I mean? It's great to see these athletes. But that's one game where I watched and I said, damn, I actually think I could play in this game. You know what I mean? Like, and look, so far this year, the Lumberjacks, I took Arizona, they open up with in Tucson, and I think I laid 27 and I covered. And then UC Riverside, which people don't realize, that's a real university that's actually not bad. I laid them again in their second game. And UC Riverside covered 1 by 24. And now they take on Colorado State, who's only played 1 game in the Mountain West. But I would say take the Rams and lay the big number. Colorado State's supposed to be a good school in the Mountain West this year. A lot of publications have them, finishing in the top 2, top 4. in the Mountain West. So I like the Rams laying what are we at? 16 I'm seeing here. There's 15.5 out there as well. Shop around. But those two stand out to me. Now, like I said, it is these are obscure games, so I will go and give you a decent one. But the problem is it's going to tip in about 14 minutes here. Give me the Rutgers Scarlet Knights.
Yes.
Their catch, the number was at 3 last night, and it's at 2.5 currently over at Circa Sports. Give me Rutgers on the money line. I think that's a dog play right there. I think Ron Harper Jr., I just like the guard play of this Rutgers team, and I think Maryland's still rebuilding a little bit. Just watch them get destroyed by Clemson. And normally Maryland's got a nice home crowd. Well, COVID's taken that out of its element. So I say, Rutgers on the money line.
Man, that's my dude right there.
It sounds
Colby
crazy.
Dant. No, it
sounds crazy that we're.
It does. No, it does. And I was gonna say too that you're just talking about being in some of these different places where we're like, I think I can play for this team. I'm starting to think I got a pretty good shot to being on Kentucky's roster right about now. We'll get into that here pretty soon in a little bit, but obviously mentioned Grand Canyon, which I thought was pretty solid for the last few years, if not nothing else, and obviously the job being taken over by Drew from Danny Hurley. So I'm sorry, Dan Marley rather. But nonetheless, man, appreciate you. Real quick question: Which way you got this stuff going for Monday Night Football? Who's on the slate tonight? What those numbers look like? Who you got for the night?
Let me pull up that live number, but I do believe here. Actually, give me like 0.2 seconds, and I will, because I did not look at the number until
I know I kind of threw you off. I probably threw you off just a little bit.
Well, a lesson for every gambler out there: try to bet the game as early as possible. I think. I got Cleveland +3. It's at Baltimore -3 right now, and look, Baltimore. I don't know why they just look off this year to me. They do kind of have a number, but I feel like these games are always close. But earlier in the year, I think they put it on Cleveland. But I don't know, something about the Browns, man. Give me the points. I just something about Baltimore. As much as I'm a John Harbaugh guy, I think he's an underrated coach. I'm a Lamar Jackson guy. A lot of people, I remember when he got drafted in the first round, a lot of people were saying, "Hey, my guy Jalen Hurts." By the way, if you listen to us, I've been fighting for Jalen Hurts. People were calling him out, saying it was a horrible pick by the Eagles. My guy's going to play some good ball. But yeah, give me the Browns +3.
Man, make sure y'all follow my dude who's on the show right now in the locker room, as I like to call it, with us. Colby Dant, writer, college basketball analyst, comedian. Make sure I throw that in there, podcast host. Go and check him out at the Kobe D. Now, I want to jump into some of this straight college basketball talk, obviously. Let's start off with one of the blue blood programs, that being Duke. Okay. Some comments by Coach K. I want to know where you stand on this, because I heard obviously his comments going into the season about how we need to play these games, and then he loses 2 games to 2 Big Ten teams, obviously one of them being over my shoulder here, these little Michigan State Spartans in Illinois. And the next thing you know, he's talking about, I don't know, this is really such a great idea, whatever, what have you. We probably need to put an end to this so that he stops playing his non-conference games and just wait until they get into conference play. Nate Oates, the head coach of Alabama, steps in and kind of mentioned something about it to a reporter, indirectly but directly at the same time, and pretty much just said what everybody was already thinking anyways, and now he's apologized for it. Do you think he should apologize for what he said? I mean, I said for him having the balls to even step up and say it was just enough for me.
Yeah, man, I'm all on board, and I think he has I'm in a bubble here, I guess, but I think he has the voice of the common person here that thinks, hey, what do you mean, dude? Like, you're the one that was lobbying for this, and I think it's only fitting. Like, if you were undefeated, I really doubt, And then I even thought like he was in there, and he's like, Did you see Coach K's like he released a video the next day saying, you got to remember, these guys aren't paid athletes. There's a mental toll. And I'm sitting there like, yeah, I agree. Look, we're the first to lobby. I think you probably agree with me. There should be some type of payment for these players. But at the same time, where was this before, dude? You know what I mean? Like, you're saying this. I find it convenient that you're mentioning it here. And Christmas is right around the corner. It's been a hard year on us. look, man, and I sympathize with the players, but at the same time, to me, after a year with COVID, dude, I haven't been able to do stand-up. And that's something I love to do. You have to love stand-up because you get into it with going to do bowling alleys and shit like that, like performing at really, really tough spots. So like,
yeah,
I don't care. I'll play. I love what I do. So I think the players want to play. You saw at college football, Trevor Lawrence released that, and then Justin Fields, everyone else, retweeted that they want to play, man. And you can't just live in a box. I understand, it's been a crazy tough year and the numbers are really high, but at the same time, I don't buy it, man. I was sad to see Nate Oates apologize because I think you just own that. But I was sad to see like Dick Vitale come at Nate Oates and all these other people, and I'm like, come on, man, it's his opinion, and you gotta think there's some merit there. What it's like? Remember when he had that back injury in like the mid '90s, Coach K?
Yeah,
remember that? Remember that? Yeah. And I like that team they had, but the chips started falling. He's like, oh, and the back injury's back. I'm out, man.
Yeah, the back, and everything. Yeah.
And I like, dude, and Coach K's done a lot for the game, and I would probably like him as a person. I don't know, but I'm saying, I come on, can we all just call a spade and say, that's some BS? That's what I think.
Yeah. No, I agree to that. I would definitely have liked for Nate Oates to own it. Obviously, he picked up the phone and called Coach K. He felt really bad. He apologized. Maybe Coach K kind of smoothed it over and talked to him about, how he was really looking at it at the time and whatever else, what have you. And this is the same guy that said all 357-ish Division I teams deserved an opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament. So, but that's neither, here nor there. And so I'll be really excited to see what's going to come out of all that. And speaking of blue blood programs, there's another one that 6 hours north of me, which is the halfway point between here and essentially Detroit in a roundabout way. Lexington, Kentucky Wildcats. So essentially, Coach Cal starts the season out 1-3. Okay. Going into their last game. And that's the first time that had been done since his very first year at Memphis, where they followed that up. They followed up 1-3 by going 1-3 in their next 4 games. It looks like he's on a very similar trajectory. We know that they're a bad 3-point shooting team. People are never going to allow you to forget that during halftime shows and so forth. What in the hell is going on with Kentucky, dude? And what is the problem here? Because apparently this whole one and done recruiting thing is just not panning out for a lot of these programs. Obviously, it worked for them in 12. It worked for Duke in 15. But if you look at the last handful of years, you have a Virginia team who didn't have a one and done. You had a Carolina team who only had one and done. You had 2 Villanova teams that didn't have a one and done. What is your outlook on exactly what's happening with Kentucky right now?
Well, I mean, there's 2 things here. I mean, first off, it's the evolution of basketball, the grad transfer, and you're seeing this in football too. I mean, just today, there was like 200 names that grad transferred essentially. I mean, the season's not even done in football, and they're like, yeah, next year I'm going somewhere else. And look, and I support that. I think players should have the freedom to try to find a better place for them. But in college basketball, I actually think it helps the game. I know. Look, I have I'm curious your take on this because, through my podcast, a lot of people reach out saying, "Oh, I miss the '90s," and growing up, and I grew up in ACC country where they were epic games between North Carolina, Duke, Maryland, and the Big East with Georgetown, Syracuse, and stuff like that, and just deep teams, incredibly deep teams that had NBA players on the bench. Doesn't really happen anymore, but I actually think from a equal standpoint of the game, like you wouldn't see back in the 90s, you wouldn't see a VCU in the Final Four or out of nowhere Texas Tech making a run or Loyola Chicago. And I think the fact that I think it's great for the sport, for the hardcore guys like myself that are watching, and I know I think it's fantastic for the sport. Now, sure, obviously you would like the name recognition to see a star stay at a team for a few years, but I think this is the evolution of basketball, and I think in the future, Calipari and Coach K, you look at North Carolina last year. I think you want to get the perfect blend. Yeah, you want to get that freshman that's just going to be absolutely on another level, But I also think you want to surround him with some key pieces, maybe a grad transfer from, I don't know, Northern Iowa or something that where the guy is solid and is a good player, but probably doesn't have a NBA skill set, maybe in Europe or something. But I think that's what's going on, and I do think it's great because I actually kind of enjoy when a blue blood has a down year or two. Like North Carolina last year, I was like, yes, beat them, Georgia Tech, beat them, every team. So, but I do think when you look at this Wildcats team, man, they don't pass the ball well. I mean, I was breaking down. I want to say it was the Kansas game for my podcast, and they were coming off that Richmond loss, which I like Richmond a lot this year. But
me too.
Yeah, dude. Oh, they're five redshirt. I believe all 5 starting 5 redshirt seniors. Yeah. But they only had I can't recall the exact number. I think it was like 7 assists the whole game or something like that. It was something unbelievable that you're like, how do you even do that? You know what I mean? Like, you have skilled players. You know what I mean? They're young, but it's like something's not right there. And I actually think Calipari traditionally is a pretty good. He's not just like I don't want to mean to throw shade at Rick Barnes, but I feel like Rick Barnes is more of just a recruiting guy. Where I think Calipari is a recruiting guy, but he also can coach. I actually believe that he is a good coach at situations. He can really be a good basketball coach. I don't know how you lose to Notre Dame, and they got to pass the ball. They got to shoot the ball better. But I mean, I think the key thing is I think that game, and they were actually lucky that Detroit canceled because Mike Davis, former Indiana coach, I kind of like his team, man, and Detroit might have beat them. And now they had UCLA and Louisville after that. I find it ironic they couldn't play that game, right? Yep. But I really think it's probably passing. I still think there's time to get it together. The talent's there. I mean, the talent's there. They just got to work out the kinks, and this hasn't been a normal year to defend the COVID thing. Who knows how much time? I don't know how much time the players got to actually go play. I would imagine everyone had the same amount of time, but at the same time, who knows with COVID? So
it's funny you say that because I don't know. I just feel like everybody's using the COVID thing for everything. You know what I mean? It's like, well, picked up a couple pounds. Not me, of course, because I'm the skinniest dude in the world. I could probably hula hoop in a Cheerio or a rubber band. But it's like, I picked up a couple pounds. COVID. Hey, how come you didn't clean your room? COVID. I mean, like, I feel like COVID is the reason for like literally everything that you didn't do that you were supposed to do. You know what I mean? It's like COVID this and COVID that. And I also feel like Colby Dant, who's joining us right now, obviously living in my brain rent free because if anybody makes comparisons to Coach Cal and Rick Barnes about how great of recruiters they are, but can never get the job done in the end and so forth, maybe having a I guess the word I'm looking for here is potential to being outcoached. Nobody else is there than a couple of those guys, especially Rick Barnes. So I think that we're pretty much right on track and feeling the same way about a couple of them. Let me ask you a question about this blue blood thing before we move on to talking about Keyontae Johnson, and then obviously following that up with some of the rankings before we get out of here. Give me, and I don't know if I asked you this last week. I was having some conversations with a couple buddies of mine, and it led to some more conversations with different buddies of mine because I felt the need that I want to get different people's opinion, as passionate as I am about college basketball. Who are your list of blue blood programs? Like if someone said just name as many or all of the blue blood programs in college basketball, who are those? And not only that, but what's the criteria? What is it? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just as it's left up to Colby Dant. Who are those, and what is that definition of blue blood? What's that criteria? Who are those teams to Colby D?
I mean, I think it's something that it's very subjective because I think it's just symbolizes basketball essentially, and I think that can change. So take Indiana for example. They've been out of it for so long. I don't consider them a blue blood. I don't. They're still a decent program, like going in and out. You got a game next up against Indiana. Yeah, you got to take that serious. They're still a good team, and they have some talent.
Especially if it's at Indiana.
Yeah. But it's not. I would not put it on that pedestal that it was once at. Same with. Look, I grew up in Washington D.C., Georgetown. I mean, we talked about this last night, man, and it pains me to see it, but they're not a blue blood anymore. I'm sorry. It's been too long. They're not a blue blood. They were for a little bit there, but so I think it just means you make the tournament maybe 10 years in a row and actually do something. Maybe, I don't know. I didn't, off the top of my head, I just think you just think, oh man, they're legit. And I think that still comes with, even with North Carolina having the down year, we know they've had success lately, just not last year. So they're still in the blue blood. Duke's still a blue blood. Your Michigan State Spartans, as long as Tom Izzo will be there, I would be very, surprised if they're not a blue blood. In my mind, at least. Gonzaga, I do put in there because they dominate that conference. Even though they don't have a natty, I just think they're always really, really talented. You know what I mean? Like, it's even on years where they lose. Like, they don't ever have losing records, but years where they lose traditionally more than they do in other seasons. You still look at the roster and you're like, yeah, they got some good players. You know what I mean?
But how unfair is that, though, Colby? If you have a program like in Indiana, who obviously isn't what it used to be, but it's not like they're, San Francisco when they had Bill Russell and then they won 2 titles and they looked like they were this dynasty of some sort. And then obviously, they haven't looked the same since. You have a Gonzaga program who is consistently good. A lot of times, not just because of the transfers that they get, but even more so because the West Coast Conference that they play in being so less than stellar. And they have no titles in one Final Four, but you have a team like Indiana who don't stink. I mean, they're not terrible. They're just not what they used to be. They got 5 national titles, but they can't live the blue blood life to Colby D anymore. Like, what is that? And how far? And not only that, but how far do we go back when we start considering blue bloods? Like, are we going back 20 years, 25 years? Is it ever since this thing was put together in 1939 or when James Naismith created the game December 21st of 1891? Don't ask me how I remember that, but just in general, like, what is the criteria and why is that? And even for the people, and I just want to make sure I'm gonna give you that opportunity to speak on it. For the people out there streaming live on YouTube, streaming live on Facebook, feel free to comment below with your questions and opinions. What is the criteria, as we're talking about right now, for blue bloods? How far back do you go? Who are those teams? What is that definition? Go ahead, Colby D.
First off, I was impressed with the reciting of the James Naismith and being, I'm just gonna go with it because I have no idea, but it sounded great. I think though it's subjective, man. But I will say there is something to it where I think coaching stability, and I think Indiana is one that hasn't had that with the failures under Tom Crean. Archie Miller kind of hasn't lived up to it. It's too early to tell. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But to defend him, even Mike Davis, I just mentioned him a minute ago. Now he got him to the championship. They lost to Maryland, but I mean, it's just and I actually think he's a decent coach, but it's just you're going into a place with crazy expectations. And let's be honest, as much as I've been to Indiana, they have Butler, they have a rich basketball tradition, but I mean, the players aren't in Indiana. You know what I mean? They're in New York. They're in, Virginia. They're in, where a lot of other places, in my opinion. I'm sure there's still some decent talent there. Georgia, whatever, Florida. But I just don't think that they've earned that title over 20 years. Now, I think that changes per decade, maybe. I know we're making this up as we go, but Mark Few has never missed the NCAA tournament. So we can knock them for a lot of times. I fade Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament. I do. You know what I mean? And I think the year they went to the Final Four, I look like a fool. You know what I mean?
We look like fools.
Yeah. But at the same time, I do believe that, like, I think you make a compelling case where if you put Indiana in the West Coast Conference, Do they make the tournament every year? Perhaps. I don't know about every year, but I think you might have them in the tournament every year. So then you could say, well, then does the coach have more stability because he's making the tournament every year? Perhaps. But I still think Gonzaga, like they're kind of like on the San Antonio Spurs thing, man. They go like around the world just getting these players that I'm always impressed with their skill level. Maybe they lack some physicality sometimes against, some of the other blue bloods. But I'm always impressed that I'm like, damn, like this dude can play, and I never even heard of this guy, But to add to the original conversation, Villanova, you could argue that Villanova was out for a little bit, right? You know what I mean? And then they came back. Kentucky. What about the years they had? What's his name from A&M? Billy.
Oh, Gillespie.
Gillespie, yes. They were really bad. Now that was a short leash, but
yes, it was.
Kentucky stays in there because they're just
the Kentucky.
Yeah. But Arizona is one that you got to think. Sean Miller didn't get it right. Are they on the outs on this? Because they look, and I remember the days when Arizona was just filthy. UCLA, Steve Alford. Are they still a blue blood? They have so many national championships. How can you say they're not? But at the same time, it's like
they haven't been the same. They've got their 3 straight Final Fours. What was that? I think 06, 07, 08 or whatever. And Ben Howland, I think, at that time or whatnot. Yeah. And I obviously didn't mean to cut you off, but I definitely feel you on that. But I also feel like once you start mentioning Arizona's, who was the last team out of the Pac-12 to win a national championship, and that was – I don't know what 97 to 2020 is, but I feel like that's probably somewhere around 23 years or somewhere in that range. My math is really bad, so that's why I do this podcast. But just in general, when you start mentioning Arizona's, you probably got to get really close to start mentioning Michigan's and then it's like, yeah, we can't go that far. You know what I mean? And so I definitely agree with you on what you're saying. I think the consensus would probably still say the top 5. And I'm not trying to put this in increments of 5. We can do that if you like. That would essentially over time be probably Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, UCLA, and North Carolina. 4 of the 5 all wear blue. Actually, I think all of the 5 wear blue. But when you start getting into, the next 5, it's really difficult because where you would put a Villanova who has 3 national titles now, but they fell off much like Indiana did, but Indiana has more. I'm not going to go as far to say that a football priority or dominant program like Florida deserves in, but they've got their 2 national championships, something Gonzaga doesn't have. And they have just as many Final Fours as Gonzaga does since 2010s, for the last 10 years, and they got another one in 2000 when they played for the national championship and losing to Michigan State. So I think that there's just so many different elements. It's easy for us to say, well, this team, that team. I mean, hell, dude, since 2000 or since 99, what is that, 21 years? I mean, dude, UConn has 4 national titles, but they're not what they used to be.
Coaching stability. If Calhoun's still there, they're regarded as one of the tops. And I know he's really old, so I don't. But what do you think about that angle? Because I think the fact, like I'm out here on the West Coast, and I think people think Gonzaga is the best team on the West Coast, not Arizona, not UCLA, year in, year out, and I think it might just have to do with college basketball. The players change fast, especially at those big programs. They're going to the league or they're going somewhere pretty fast. And the coaching stability kind of like resonates in your mind of like, oh, I know they have him and they'll be a good team. You know what I mean? Do you think there's any merit to that?
I think in some ways. I mean, we're sitting up there talking about Gonzaga. Like, dude, you just talked about the year that they went to the Final Four. You faded on them, and as did I, and we look like fools. But I have a really good feeling, and I'm not saying a great feeling, but I do have a really good feeling that with this being the year that everybody's talking Gonzaga, because they look like the best team in the country, and they probably score the most points of any team in the country and what have you. And then you're looking outside of them. You say Baylor, maybe. I'm not sure if I feel as confident about them that I do Gonzaga, and not really a whole bunch of other teams after that. So the consensus is going to say Gonzaga. Well, this is the year that I would take them in, that they still don't go again. And then I can see when April rolls around after Final Four or going into next year, you're saying to yourself, I'll never touch that team again, because nobody was in the same conversation as them a year ago, and they still didn't get the job done that we needed them to get done and that they needed for their own program, this being the best shot for them to do it. And I can't even guarantee that they're going to do it, especially not having guys like Philip Petrusev and Killian Tilly. But, and I don't want to get too crazy with it and just oversaturate the conversation by any means, but I'm just kind of curious to know, even from the people, who are some of those blue blood teams? Who are your blue bloods, number one? And number two, what is the criteria? What is your definition of blue blood? If it is increments of 5 in Carolina, Kansas, Duke, Kentucky, and UCLA are all off the board, who is your next 5? You do have Arizona. You do have obviously Indiana. You have Michigan State. You have Villanova. I mean, I don't know if you want to put Virginia in that conversation, but are we forgetting anybody else? Because I feel like we are.
I mean, wait, you didn't have Michigan State in there?
Oh, Connecticut. Yeah. So there's Arizona, Connecticut, Villanova, Indiana, Michigan State, and I'm trying to think. Colby Dant says Gonzaga. I mean, there's some other teams that maybe you can throw in there at that point, but I guess just a little something for the people as we get ready to roll on. First of all, let me let the people know who we got on here, man, as we probably got every bit of let's just go about 9 or 10 minutes left with my dude Colby Dant, man, bringing him in and talking a bunch of college basketball. This dude's smart, man. Is all get out. Hella funny, too. Check him out. He's a comedian as well. Writer, college basketball analyst, comedian, podcast host, the whole nine. Follow him at Colby D, on Twitter. I want to get into the top 25, but I just want to very, very briefly get your opinion on what's happening right now. Keyontae Johnson, and maybe what information that you have that obviously just came down on today. Had a game over the weekend in an in-state rivalry game against Florida State, and within the first couple minutes of the game, coming out of timeout, collapsed. Dude fell flat on his face. Prayers to him and his family on the outcome and the result of what's going to happen with him and his career and so forth, and that it's a speedy recovery for him. But that happening, I don't know, Colby. I told you the other day, I think yesterday, and even today we're texting back and forth. I'm getting some weird feelings about this dude. And if this stuff is COVID related, in which I'm really hoping that it's not, I'm afraid that it's going to cancel out a whole lot of stuff, not only college basketball, but basketball in general and a lot of our sports. What are you hearing? What are some of your takes on what's transpiring with Keyontae Johnson and the way that the NCAA needs to kind of handle this situation?
I just find it smells to me, man. It smells, and
funny. Funny.
I'm no doctor, man, but like they haven't released anything. I think they've moved him to 3 different hospitals now, and they haven't released anything with the exception of the fact he's in a coma. You know what I mean? And it just, I get it maybe on Saturday or Sunday, but this is, we're pretty far into this is
creeping up on Tuesday at this point.
Yeah, and it's really concerning that they haven't. A doctor has had to diagnose something, right? It's been this long. I'm no doctor, but you would just think they would figure something out right now, saying, "Oh, this would be an issue." Now, like I said, COVID, who knows? But I would think we're studying it, but around the clock right now as a society. It just smells to me. It seems like they're protecting it to me. And I really hope, first off for him, because, this is a kid that's, first off, he's a hell of a basketball player,
yes, he is.
But then the fact that, if the university, first off, how do you fail that? If that's if let's play devil's advocate, if it's the worst, let's say it was COVID, you only have like a 14, 15 man roster. How the doctors miss that? I don't, and I do think at that point, which my stance has been play the games, but I do think if this is COVID, might look back and say I was a fool, especially if this guy loses his life. You know what I mean? But even with it right now, with his life in jeopardy, perhaps, it's not a good look, and it just seems weird that they've issued statements, and the statements don't reveal anything. It almost reminds me of like when like a someone getting like when JFK got shot. You know what I mean? The statements that they issue, you're sitting there like, okay, this doesn't say much, but we know something happened. You know what I mean? So, I'm surprised that our media, the way that we cover certain things, how have they not gotten to the point of this more? You can't tell me that. I understand doctors, they can't release everything, but at the same time, I'm just shocked that, this is TMZ world, man. You can find out
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can find out if like Bruce Willis went on a date last night. You know what I mean? Like what's going on here? But yeah, it's really concerning. And like I said, like we read that article from USA Today. I know you sent me that, and then I sent you something that was tweeted. Just something's not something. And I'm surprised that we haven't covered it more. And I don't know if it's just the unknown that people don't want to touch it or what. But it doesn't feel good to me, and it just feels like we might. The only thing I can think of is that it's COVID related, and we're all doomed, which I hope is not the case.
Yeah. No, I agree with you on that, and just with where, like you said, with where we're at in the society today, that's kind of where all of our brains are automatically going right now. With everything, and I don't think that that's the worst thing in the world, because that's just the reality that we're living in. And sometimes I feel like people try and run away from that from time to time. And obviously, putting prayers up for him and hoping that that's not the case. But I tell you what, not that money is any bit of important in this situation, because it's not. But in the event that it is, this family's looking at a ridiculous amount of payday, because this is also a team that had to postpone a lot of its team activities over the off season because of COVID and the exposure. You have the grandfather that's speaking up right now that is saying essentially, I don't know if he was tested positive or not. To me, that's a little
and the financial,
it's a little hard for me to believe, if I'm just being honest, that he doesn't know and that nobody knows. And now, obviously, he's been one that has been transported back to Gainesville. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, man. I wasn't paying
No worries.
But no, I mean, the financial side, you mentioned that, but also from the NCAA side, which makes, when I see the press clippings released like that, as what I'm seeing, as what they're classifying as, it's very, limited. And the only thing I can think of is that the NCAA is protecting their money. They know how essential college football and college. Imagine if the college football playoffs don't get played. That's millions of dollars at stake. Because if this thing is real, it ain't just affecting basketball. It's everything. Now, I know it's only really basketball and football that bring in revenue, but I'm saying it is going to make it really challenging for the next year. If that's the case, then college football next year, because look, I know we got the vaccine or whatever, and there's news on that, but at a rate that there's a lot of unknowns still out there, and the numbers are growing daily. So I just think it makes it, oh man, I would hate. And obviously then what we're looking at it from the entertainment side, but the real side is like, this is a university that then potentially played a player that had this thing, and this guy might lose life from it, which is just absolutely horrible. So yeah, I don't know, but I can tell you that I'm surprised that's not covered more.
Yeah, not only that, but I'm a little bit surprised that with everything going on in the world today, that that they even continue to play this game, knowing everything that's happening. Like, a dude just fell flat on his face. We don't know if he's gonna live. We don't know what happened. We have no idea. Probably haven't seen something remotely close to that, maybe since Hank Gathers or something like that. But we're still gonna play the game because the game's important. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But with just a couple minutes left with you, Colby, we want to get into some of this top 25 with you. Gonzaga comes out ranked number 1 for week 4 for the AP poll. 54 first place votes. They're 3-0. Baylor is second with 7 first place votes. They're 4-0. And Iowa with 1 first place vote. Checking in at number 3, who is 6-0. Just to jump through this first top 10. Michigan State is at number 4, 6-0. Kansas, number 5, 6-1. Houston is number 6, 4-0. Villanova, number 7 with 1 loss. West Virginia, number 8 with 1 loss. Creighton, number 9 with 1 loss, just took one to Kansas over the weekend. And then undefeated Tennessee, who has only played 2 games, appears to be the least amount of anybody ranked in the top 25. They check in at number 10. Of those 10 teams, Gonzaga, Baylor, Iowa, Michigan State, Kansas, Houston, Villanova, West Virginia, Creighton, and Tennessee. Is there a team on here that you that sticks out to you like a sore thumb beyond any others that just interest you for whatever reason that it may be?
Well, I think Kansas is misranked. I haven't been very impressed with them this year. I just think that, they barely escaped North Dakota State. They did. Hey, they got a good win against Creighton, and I like that Creighton team, but I just don't know. I don't know how you have them ahead of Villanova. I know Villanova lost to Virginia Tech, but I think Virginia Tech's a decent team. Mike Young's doing a good job with that Hokies team. And Tennessee, I don't know enough yet. I watched them beat Colorado, and I like, Colorado. It's got a few players. I like McKinley Wright, but the one that just stands out to me is I'm like, okay, and I had my doubts about Iowa too coming into the year. But I'll say this: I think me and you both agreed. We talked about some college basketball, and like, dude, I was overrated. I still think they're overrated, by the way. But I will say that was really impressive against North Carolina. They looked really good. Yeah, they looked the inside, the outside game, the passing. They looked really good, and I can't knock them there. But I am shocked about. I think is it me or is Kansas just there on reputation right now?
Yeah, they're their own reputation. And in some ways, I'm not saying a ton of ways. In some ways, I think that Michigan State is their own reputation as well. I think that they are, and they aren't for different reasons. I think that they are there based on reputation because that's what it is, but also because they beat Duke. But if Duke's really not that good, they don't really have very many more impressive games on their resume in a very short span. I mean, yes, they beat a Notre Dame team who I don't think anybody would necessarily sneeze at, even if they beat Kentucky. But we just got done talking about Kentucky's not really like that. So I do have that sense that Kansas is there based on the reputation. Houston may be feeling like the most underappreciated and disrespected team in the top 25. Furthermore, you do have a Creighton team that is a little harder for me to believe in. For me, they're a little bit more along the realm of Iowa, to me anyways. And then you have a Tennessee team who has only played 2 games when it appears that everybody else is playing more 4, 5, 6, 7 games. And how do you rank them if they don't play nearly as many games? Like, where do you put them considering all things?
And I mean, I'm sorry. Once again, I'm cutting you off, man. But like,
no, go ahead.
There's a couple teams that, like, have you watched Missouri?
I did, dude.
I'm loving Missouri, bro.
Dude, they look really good. Now, I'm not sure if they should go from unranked to 16, but I'm okay if they went from unranked to 22, or they went unranked to maybe 20 max. Like, I don't think they deserve a better ranking than 20. Like, I don't think that they've proved necessarily enough. But they play really hard, and anytime that you are in that crossroads or border wars or whatever matchup with Illinois, and you beat them again, a really good Illinois team, you've got to be pretty damn good. I mean, people in Columbia, Missouri are obviously really optimistic, and for a good reason.
And we mentioned, look, I have nothing personal against Rick Barnes, probably a nice guy, but I question his coaching, right? And we mentioned Kentucky being down. We know Auburn is down. Florida's got their best player, in a coma. Mm-hmm. SEC could be up for grabs, man. And to me, the way that Quanzo Martin's gotten, I know it's early, and I don't want to do this because I feel like every year it's like me with Baylor last year. It's like, they're the best team in the country. And then, 2 weeks later or a month later, you're like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. But I've been extremely impressed with them. I also have been extremely impressed, and San Diego State, I've been really impressed with, man. like that. I love the way they play defense, man. And you know, Arizona State I think is really talented, but Bobby Hurley's another one. I think the jury's still out on how well Bob Hurley can coach, because I mean, I got nothing against the guy either, but I look at Arizona State's team from a talent perspective, and I'm like, this could be a really nasty team.
Yes.
But their performance every time, I mean, they almost lost to Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon by 1, yeah.
And even Cal, who struggled in the Pac-12, or in college basketball season, they haven't played many Pac-12 teams yet, but they got very fortunate to beat Cal. That was like a game that was like down to the last minute or two. Now I do think they were the better team, but I just haven't been impressed with them. But San Diego State, I feel like every year, dude, and look, at the end of last year, I was fading them. I took Utah State to beat them in the Mountain West Championship. But they're just a team to me, though, that year in, year out, they have like this blue-collar mentality, and it's just that they won up on UCLA. Now, UCLA didn't have a couple guys, but they still won by like 20. So it's like, can your guys really make up that much? Maybe, but I've been really impressed with them, and I thought they were, not getting any preseason love, So, but let me ask you this: I talked about Rutgers. Have you had a chance to check out Rutgers this year?
I have. I mean, dude, even from them putting this whole thing together last year, I think it kind of started the year before last, but for the most part, it being last year, and what they've been able to put together under Steve Peichel, dude, I think is just outstanding. It's awesome. It's good for the Big Ten. It's good for Rutgers. It has a very similar feel to maybe where Rutgers football team is trying to get to under a new coach as well. Well, a new coach again, I guess, if you will. But it just has that similar feel. And I'm not going to go as far as saying college basketball is in a much better place when Rutgers is good. Like, I'm not sure it really matters that much. But they play, they play at the rack. When they play at home, it's always pumping. It's always jumping. A very difficult place to play at a lot of times, especially if Rutgers just has a decent team. A lot of people talk about Ron Harper Jr., obviously, and I can't, forgive me for butchering his name, but the last name I think is Amori, who is the highest ranked recruit in Rutgers history. Not that he's done a whole lot as a freshman, but I just think that having that kind of lineup that they have mixed in with experience, a very passionate coach, and then even a player that's pretty damn good coming straight out of high school and their highest ranked recruit in school history, who we really haven't even talked about very much. Sky's the limit, man. I mean, we talk about, Big Ten. I mean, you've got so many good teams in there. We know about the ranked ones, the ones at the top with your, obviously Michigan State and Illinois and Iowa. But as you get a little closer towards the bottom, is where you have your Ohio State, who I still think is pretty damn good and was really high up there around this time last year. Rutgers being right there, obviously. Michigan re-entering the top 25 again. They're undefeated. Penn State taking some teams down to the bare bottom. So this is a really tough conference, dude. I think from top to bottom, in my opinion, the toughest in the country.
Yeah, and they proved that in the ACC Big Ten Challenge, because I think those are your people would say probably your top two conferences coming in. I actually think the Big 12 is a little underrated too, but I think the Big Ten is by far. I mean, especially they proved it on the court, but even coming into it, I thought last year, I thought the same thing. It's like, man, like even though I'm a skeptic on Iowa, but I mean this year I was all over Illinois, and Michigan State's pretty much playing. I still think they're playing at the level I imagine they would be at. But I think Rutgers is playing better than what I thought they would be right now. And then I guess we got to learn more about Maryland and Ohio State. Ohio State's been banged up a little bit, but Indiana, even, dude, I don't understand how Indiana, they've been kind of up and down to me, but I'm saying, I watched one game where they look great. I was like, oh my, who are they playing again? I don't remember who, but I was sitting there. I was like, man, maybe the Hoosiers are going to, be a real player in the Big Ten, and they still could be because they got some talent. But yeah, I think it's cut and dry the best conference of college basketball. Look, and I grew up in ACC country, but a lot of the people love to say year in, year out, ACC is the best. That thing has changed, man.
Yes, it has.
Being down, and I get it, Virginia is good, but I'll take the Big Ten. I think for the past few, I think it's more than a couple years now.
Yeah, about 3 or 4. It's getting close to 4. Definitely every bit of 3 years, I would say, and I would take them too. And while we're talking about that, there's a couple teams within the Big Ten as we move now to the next slate of 10 teams. So you have Texas, who is at number 11, Wisconsin at 12, Illinois at 13, Texas Tech 14, Florida State 15, Missouri 16, Virginia 17, San Diego State 18, Rutgers 19, and Ohio State 20. I think that's where you have the biggest bulk of probably the Big Ten teams. Give me your take on just a couple of those teams. Who's underrated? Maybe who's overrated? Who do you like? Who do you kind of dislike a little bit more? Again, Texas, Wisconsin, Illinois, Texas Tech, Florida State, Missouri, Virginia, San Diego State, Rutgers, and Ohio State.
I'll say Wisconsin hasn't looked the part yet to me. They lost to Marquette, and even in the Rhode Island game, which they actually were decently impressive in that Rhode Island game, but they still, I don't know, like that. I guess I just need to see more before I sign on with Wisconsin. You know, my brother's a huge college basketball fan, and he was really sold on Wisconsin this year, so I've been texting him back and forth, being like, I don't know, man, but I Shaka Smart. I'm telling you, the defense that Texas is playing right now. I mean, the thing is, you know, the college basketball, it's a long race. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. But if you were to tell me right now, if we either do the tournament tomorrow, I actually think I wouldn't be surprised if Texas was in the Final Four, because the way they're playing defense, and I don't know. I mean, obviously seeding would have to matter. But I've been really impressed with them, and even their losses were like that Villanova game. You know, it was a close game. I think Villanova was a better team. They got the win, and but I still been really impressed, especially considering Texas' season last year. So maybe that has something to do with it. But Ohio State, I want to see more as well. Michigan, though, I've been really impressed with. I thought one of the best things Juwan Howard did was bring in Phil Martelli. I thought that was a smart move for a guy that hadn't coached college basketball. And I was bullish on the Illini. I do think the Illini will get back, and I think they're going to. Me too. Yeah, so I think they're going to be a player in that conference, and I think they're going to be a player on the national front. Like, wouldn't be surprised if they're in the Final Four still. I mean, I think I took them at the beginning of the year, so I gotta still own that.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, we can't do too much backtracking. I guess you can if you want. You're Colby Dant, man. You can do whatever you want. And when you got somebody like Illinois, man, I really believe that one of the things that they need to kind of lock in, laser focus on a little bit more, is to get more than just 2 guys involved if they want to win basketball games. You know, everybody talks about Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi Cockburn, which it's no surprise that I'm not, you know, I'm really happy I got the last name Tate and I don't have Coburn. But I will say enough to say that the Illinois team, we know that what the offense is going to run through. Okay, we know it's going to run through those 2 guys, obviously, the same way that it did in 2005 with D. Brown and Darren Williams. But the thing is, they got other guys involved to where you didn't just have to lock in on a couple guys, and then, you know, you had bad shot selection and so forth. You got your Luther Heads in there. You got your James Augustines in there. You got your, you know, you got different guys that were able to step up and do so many. Powell is another guy. They had so many weapons, and I think that they got a lot of weapons on this Illinois team. Brad Underwood just has to do a better job at not channeling so much of his inner John Katie grouchy look, and more so look more into some of the other guys on the team that are pretty much wide open instead of Ayo Dosunmu taking shots over like 3 defenders. Texas Tech, obviously a team that's really good defensively. I like them this year. I think they're going to be tough. Wisconsin obviously was another one of those teams for me. Not as much Florida State, Missouri for me, or Virginia is just going to be Virginia. Them and Texas Tech always going to be those 2 stifling defense teams, but have that questionable offense sometimes, as I saw Abilene Christian, who I love this year, you know, against Texas Tech, and that one came down almost to the wire. I think like a 4, 5, 6 point game. But as we jump into these last 5, typically you don't see Duke in this conversation, but you have Duke at 21. North Carolina at 22. Wow, just the thought of having Duke, North Carolina at 21 and 22, and with Kansas not even being ranked, UCLA not even being ranked, You have Louisville at 23, followed by Clemson and Michigan. Just a little bit of some thoughts on a few of those teams as a good buddy of mine who always chimes in, and I absolutely love this dude right here, Rob Hamilton, who's checking us out on Facebook. How about my Clemson Tigers? So we will ask Colby Dant along with some of those other teams in that last five before we get up out of here to kind of dive into them a little bit.
What specifically Clemson right now, or
Clemson and just any of the five?
Clemson, I've been thoroughly impressed with. I mean, they just put a beating on Maryland and what they took down Purdue earlier, and I'm intrigued to watch them as the season goes on because I guess I kind of had the middle of the pack, and they are looking. I mean, can anyone really tell me that Duke looks better than Clemson right now? Right. Why is Duke there? I know we've been bragging, we've been bringing down Duke a lot on this pod, but what makes you believe? Like, where's the win that tells me that's? I don't think they belong in the top 25 right now.
And I heard, you know what? That's funny you say that because buddy of mine, Jeff Goodman, said the same thing. There is no Duke in my personal top 25. I think one of the reasons that, if any reason, it's not the wins. I think it's because, again, they're there. The same reason that Kansas is where they are. But you do have Coach K, arguably or inarguably the best coach in college basketball, maybe even history, that's still walking around on their sidelines. And they're one that you don't want to count out because they will make you pay. And I kind of think that's why.
I'm just saying, man, for your pal that's a Clemson fan, Rob, I think it was. I mean, Clemson's resume is better right now. Clemson's resume, and they look better, man. When you watch them, I've been really impressed with Clemson, with Sims and Honor, and then what do they got? Johnny Newman's like nephew or something there. But no, I have been really surprised because I thought it was a big year for Clemson basketball this year coming in. I thought they would be middle of the pack. Thought they'd be fighting for a tournament. They'd be one of those teams on the bubble that would be like, I don't know, can they get this win? But right now, I've been thoroughly impressed, and also just the way they beat Maryland. Now, sure, we don't know what Maryland is. Yeah. We need to learn about them. That's why the Rutgers game today is one that I'm really
critical.
Yeah. But other teams you mentioned there in that top. Well, first off, Illinois. Just to touch base on that. Can we get some love to? I want to see the freshman Adam Miller more.
Yeah, me too. Love him. Chicago kid. Love him.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with your analysis of their team. As much as I'm bullish on them, it's like Adam Miller, even Trent Frazier. Those guys are decent options that I feel like are underutilized thus far this season. So I agree with you there. As far as the rest of the top 25, let me pull up. I actually think North Carolina should be ranked higher than Duke too.
Really?
I think their resume is better now.
Yeah, they play better teams as well.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. Duke's talent is there. So
I don't know if they played better teams, though. I mean, when you lose to – I mean, one thing, though, Kobe, too, though, and I'm definitely not trying to go to bat for Duke by any means of the stretch of the imagination, but, I mean, they played maybe the best two teams not only in the Big Ten, but, two essentially top 10 teams in college basketball right now. Like, I mean, they lost to them, sure, but that's tough.
Yeah, and I think what really, and maybe it's just because I know that Coppin State game happened.
That's true. And Duke lost those games at home, regardless of the fans. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you make a good point, though, man, because if they were to play tomorrow, I would probably bet on Duke. But I'm just saying, based on what I've seen this year, I mean, North Carolina lost at the buzzer to Texas. Yeah. At the buzzer. That was an impressive loss to me. I mean, I know that's not going to really matter come March. But
on the road, yeah.
Yeah. So I would, if I was ranking the top 25, I would, and I'm no Carolina fan either, so I would still put Carolina above them. But let me ask you, what do you think about Florida State? I mean, obviously, Florida had Johnson out. So how much can we learn from that? Because they play Georgia Tech tomorrow, and I'll tell you this. I think Georgia Tech's currently getting 9, and I think Georgia Tech's playing a lot better after the Kentucky game, and then granted it's Nebraska, but I was tempted to take the Yellow Jackets plus the 9.
Where's that? That one has to be in Tallahassee, I would imagine.
Yeah, in Tallahassee.
Yeah, that's I like I take my chances with that with Georgia Tech tomorrow with the 9. I do. I mean, yeah, they lost to Georgia State, and Mercer obviously turned it around a little bit and got some wins against Nebraska on the road, and obviously Kentucky. Georgia Tech's one of those really weird teams, man, but they've got some guys that are playing some really good basketball and upperclassmen. Me covering that team for such a long time over the course of the last 5 years, and just listening to the head coach and Josh Pastner talk about how they need to get older. They need more adults on their team, and they've got that now between Mike DeVoe and Jose Alvarado, and I'm trying to think of the other gentleman's name who's just been an absolute monster for them up front.
Moses Wright.
Moses Wright. I mean, dude, he's just been looks like the most improved player over a course of a season or two, dude, that I've seen in the ACC in a really long time. So I definitely like Georgia Tech with that one. But as soon as you say that, I mean, Leonard Hamilton does some of the best jobs at getting some of the best out of his players. And if you would have asked me 365 days ago who Patrick Williams was, I would have told you I have no idea. If you would have asked me who's the other gentleman's name who was drafted really high this year, I can't think of his name right off.
I know what you're talking. I know who you're talking about. It's
Devin Vassell.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to tell you a ton. And he comes from this backyard of right where I'm currently located for the last 15 years. So I think that it speaks volume. The Scotty Barnes thing is cool and cute and all that kind of stuff. But he's the highest ranked recruiting program history as well. But I'm just having a hard time buying stock into them. And every time, and obviously I have a hard time keeping my money in my pocket too, because I go against Florida State and I lose. So that one is going to be a little bit more on the tougher side. I just don't know if I trust Georgia Tech enough. Trust Josh Pastner not to be out-coached enough.
I was just about to say that, man. I was like, man, Pastner, it's got to be a huge year for him, because I look at this roster and I watched them play. Now, granted, I didn't watch the Mercer game, but I'm like, man, it's almost like Arizona State. Yeah. I watched Georgia Tech and I'm like, this is a good team. There's good players on this team. How? And my defense so far is, yeah, it's early in the year, but I've never been sold on him as a coach. So yeah. I just think 9 points though for tomorrow. I would tend to lean Yellow Jackets there. I think it's going to be one of my plays over at sportsgamblingpodcast.com. So I don't know.
I'll tell you what, dude. Josh Pastner and Shaka Smart are two coaches that if they don't have it together really, really soon, I'm talking about making the tournament and or win a single game at least in the NCAA tournament, they might be putting in a request for a relocation compensation package of sorts. So, but I say this much, dude. Colby, man, thank you so much for joining me, dude. It's been a pleasure to be able to bring you on. Again, y'all make sure that y'all go and follow my dude on social media, specifically on Twitter, at the Colby D, a writer, a comedian, college basketball analyst. Go and check out his podcast. He's a host. This dude is the real deal, man. The College Experience Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Follow him at the Colby D. And again, real quick, before we run up out of here, because we did have one person that I think did miss. Only if you remember from the top of your head. If not, he has to go back and kind of rewind this joint himself. Antoine Williams asking any upsets in tonight in college basketball at all from what you've been able to see, if you remember that at all.
Well, Moneyline, he's basically, I think that, so Moneyline plays, I would say, I mean, it's a light slate. So I mean, the Rutgers game already started, I think, right?
Yeah, I think so, 6 o'clock, yeah.
That was my play, but if I had to pick a second one, see, I don't think Marquette is a live dog against Creighton. Although Creighton, that's something we didn't talk about, is Creighton doesn't have fans. They've always had so much of a home court advantage.
Correct.
I wonder how.
8? Is that at 8 against Marquette?
8, yeah, 8. So I think that's but to take it on the money line, I still think I lean Creighton. I still think I lean
for sure. I definitely lean Creighton on the money. I'm just not sure with the 8. That's a little tough, and we're going to learn a lot about Marquette, which will ultimately force us to learn a lot about who Wisconsin is, based a little bit on this game. But if that's all that you did have, and I think you said, which way did you say for NFL tonight? I believe
I went the Browns, man, and I think that one's actually a tough game. It's not that one I would not endorse as a special of mine because I think that's a backyard brawl, man. That's 2 teams in the same conference, but I do think the Browns are playing better football right now. But I don't underestimate John Harbaugh. I think the Ravens have that coaching advantage. So
we've really got to be living in 2020 in unprecedented times when we're taking the Browns against a team that came in as Super Bowl contenders. That's the truth, dude. Colby Dant, man, thank you again for joining us, bro. Really appreciate having you on. And of course, we got to do this again, man. At least maybe try and get it once a week or something if we can, and lay some stuff down for the people and give them the locks of the Dant, if you will, where he gives us his gambling locks for you guys to be able to put a couple extra presents under the tree for the kids, despite if they've been naughty or nice this year. So, Colby, man, thanks so much, man. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Always a pleasure, man. And I'm sure we'll be texting saying, hey, Rutgers just got good guard play. Or man, I didn't know Maryland had this type of defense. Thanks so much for having me on, guys. Been a blast.
Yeah, no doubt. Appreciate you, man. That was my dude, Colby Dant, that was checking in with us. And as we get ready to roll up out of here, dude, I know everybody's mind is going crazy and exploding. And because not only was that a very long-winded segment or show, if you will, but hopefully you got something out of it from 2 guys that are just extremely, extremely passionate about basketball as a whole in general, and obviously about college basketball as well, and learned a little bit in the process and some teams to kind of look out for. Keep your eyes and your ears open. Speaking of keeping your eyes and your ears open, remember to subscribe anywhere that you find your favorite podcast to right here at Tate's Take. I like to call it the best, the most entertaining, the most informational, and the most educational basketball content on the planet in the form of a podcast. So be sure to share along with a friend, family member, enemy, if you will, mama, grandmama, everybody. Go and share with someone who you know loves hoops at the local barbershops, at the local sports bars, or just shoot them a text if you're not getting out because COVID is too wacky right now. So make sure that you go and do that and follow along on social media. That's on IG as well as on the Twitter. Tate's Take Hoops, TATES TAKEHOOPS, hashtag where basketball lives. See you in a minute.